Liberty in America is under assault. We no longer live in a reality that includes property rights. We're no longer the kings of our own castle. We no longer enjoy the true benefits of capitalism. Instead, we're negotiating our rights with our own government. This isn't how our country was founded. These aren't the ideas of our founders. It's time to seize back our country. This is the Liberty Hour, where these important issues will be discussed for the sake of America's future. With a cigar in one hand and a copy of the Constitution in the other, here's your host, Sean Thompson.
This is the Liberty Hour podcast, which is live, baby. So if you care to participate in the show, give us a call. 312-642-5600. Our young man, Justin, in there will take your call. And one of the things I like to do is, I like to prepare, and I send clips to Justin, and I take advantage of the clips that Dan Proft does the homework for me the night before, just like if we were in high school. He'd be doing the homework. I'd be cheating off his paper. But the kid just told me something that's very interesting in there, and that is that Nancy Pelosi, who is the greatest fundraiser for the DNC, which is why she is always the Speaker of the House. I mean, I laugh every time one of these kids pop up, these Ocasio-Cortez from these little tiny communist districts in New York, or Sean Gaston, the green energy heiress that he is, who pops up from Westmont, and they go in there and they think they're going to have an impact, and they just don't get it. Well, Sean Gaston does, because his father was a pay-to-play lowlife for decades. But they just don't get the fact of why Nancy Pelosi, I can't feel my face. Post-op Pelosi, you see her, she's in some sort of Demerol stupor every day. Why she's the Speaker? She raises the money, honey. That's exactly what's going on. And they take the money and they give it to the DNC, and they get unlimited power regardless of their ability, regardless of what they've done legislatively, regardless of their production. And that's pretty much how government works anyway. And I laugh now that they said this Republican was stripped of his committees because of racist comments, and he comes on, and I'm not a racist, and he gets stripped of his committee positions. And none of the news agencies, none of them, talk about how he even had those committee positions. Because it's not whether you're an expert. You think that if Sean Gaston from Illinois, the green energy heiress, if he says, well, I've been in green energy business, I'm going to go on the Ways and Means Committee, the DNC says, oh, yes, you are qualified, Sean. Come on aboard. We know that you've made money in this. You've been in it. Do you think that's how it works? Because that's not how it works. He has to hand the DNC $500,000. See, that's what you've done. That's how you've corrupted the political system. That's why it's a joke that we think we have representation and they're going to look out for their constituents. See, what they do is they knuckle their constituents under, like every third world mobster. They knuckle them under. And if they want any sway with the powers that be, meaning government, they give them money. And these little scoundrels, these minions of the power structure of the Leviathan we call government, they take the money they extort from their constituents. And in some cases, it's not even their constituents. It's pay-to-play other schemes that they know they'll be voting on legislator. And they take that money, they put it in their little imaginary war chest, which is just a bag scheme, a bagman, just their little container, and they give it to the DNC to get these powers, and then they use that position to knuckle under their constituents and other companies for even more money. So it's one big extortion racket. That's why Peter Schweitzer's book, Extortion, is the best book for anybody to read. And he should be a guest on every show every week to tell you exactly what happens behind the scenes, regardless from the media news, from CNN, which, by the way, we have on here in the studio. And guess what happened just a little while ago? More U.S. service members killed in Syria, suicide bomber again. And I'm sure it's going to be like Iraq, where it's probably one of the natives we've been training, one of our guys on our side. And this is when I praise Big Donnie. Praise him. I love it when he says, let's get everybody the hell out of there. What is going on in the Middle East? Now, I know he's got to keep some of the schemes under and some of the money flowing to our enemies who are pretending to be our friends, called foreign, what is it called? Foreign donations, foreign money. And it's to help our friends when really it's to pay off our enemies. And that's a $1 trillion money scheme that we're never going to stop. We're never going to get out of. But one thing that's happening, and you're going to see more and more of these soldiers, and it's a shame. It's a shame. Because what they're not talking to you is the underlying current of why you have these soldiers in the Middle East. We all know it's because Saudi Arabia wants them there. We're fighting a war for a corrupt nation, monarchy, that doesn't have an army, that uses us, and we're told it's for our benefit, that we're squashing fires, we're on the right side. We don't know what side we're on. And that's evident and that's the beauty of Donald Trump. He exposes that. He exposes the fact you don't know what side you're on. And they've got Betsy DeVos's brother, guy who founder of Blackwater, goes before Congress and says, you realize, don't get nervous. You could pull out the troops, the kids who you've conned into fighting for you, and you hire us and you put our mercenaries in there. And at first, conservatives were aghast. Oh, that's not right. When the reality is, Betsy DeVos's trillionaire brother is exactly correct. That's exactly what we should be doing. Pay off mercenaries who go there for a specific job and know why they're there rather than destroying the youth of our nation. I've never understood this. I've never understood why you take the future of a nation, your 18-year-olds, your 19-year-olds, your 20s, your 24-year-olds, and you put them in these meat grinders. This was one of the tragedies that I think Americans realized in Vietnam. You killed off 60,000 of our future. Some of the best people among us will never know the blessings they would have been to this country. In the name of what exactly? In the name of socialism? You're fighting communism? Yeah. Anybody looking at how Pritzker got elected here in Illinois? What the hell's the difference between the Vietnamese in the 1960s and Pritzker? Anybody? They were at least productive, and they didn't have a waist above a size 32. That's the difference. We've adopted all the policies of the countries we went to war for, and you're doing it again in the Middle East. It's just despicable to me. And how is it being fought by so-called conservatives, neocons among us, or what they really are is war profiteers? They're disparaging Trump. Oh, this is terrible. It's going to be completely unstable. Oh, really? Does anyone know what a stable Middle East looks like? When's the last time the Middle East was stable? Probably before the CIA put in place the theocracy in Iran. That's what it probably looked like. Close to it. Yeah, we did that too. In the meantime, you get all twisted around, and you know what happens? Right now, how many families are mourning kids getting killed by somebody who probably pretended to be on our side in a suicide bomb? Get everybody the hell out of there. Period. End of story. And stop with the money. If they want money to behave a certain way, this is like raising kids, for God's sakes. It's outrageous. And in the meantime, the money flows, the contracts flow, the scheme goes on, Congress people buying positions, and we refer to them as representatives instead of what they really are, which is political whores and prostitutes and pimps. It's just despicable to me. But let's get back to some of the clips, because I do get sidetracked. And one of the reasons I get sidetracked is because we get pulled off into the weeds and we forget the principle. And nobody does that better than a bunch of self-aggrandizing socialist women on The View.
Did they get anywhere with it, right? But Republicans now, with this, I think, could make such a significant statement by forcing him to resign. But will Republicans now...
Oh, wait a minute. We got a caller on the line. And I never do that. But I do this for Verlan, because Verlan is my guy. Verlan, I want to take you before I distract you with a clip. How you doing, buddy?
Hello? Hey, how's it going, Sean?
Great. What's going on?
Now, listen. This Gillette thing has got me in an uproar today, okay? Now, you're going to have to bear with me.
Sure, go ahead.
I'm going to go a little racial, and, I don't do that. I really go against it, but it ties into what I got to say today, okay? This company, this liberal ideology-having company, are trying to sexify men, demasculate men. They're taking the manhood out of being a man. Like, I'm an alpha. You're an alpha man. They don't like that, okay? Number one. Now, you already seen they're coming after the old white man, per se. Now, with this commercial, they're coming after all men, but white men in specific. Okay, they've already destroyed the black man through an old liberal ideology, which is affirmative action. Okay, now through affirmative action, they found out that they can check off a couple of boxes. Women and then black women count for black.
Now,
so where did that leave the black man?
Well,
at the bottom.
First of all, I got a couple things I want to say. All right, to this, and I'll pick you up. Believe me, I'm gonna, as you know, this is a podcast. I don't have to go to commercial. You and I are talking here. So here's what I got. A couple things I want to say to you. First of all, I listened to Dan on the morning show, and I agree, wholeheartedly with a lot of what he said. But one thing I don't agree with is they're not giving you this commercial to lead society. They're giving you this commercial because this is what society is. For 10 years, men have not been men openly. And that is supposed to be the current wave. And I attribute that to Barack Obama. Men, subliminally, men have been emasculated for decades, which is what you're talking about with affirmative action, with all this. You're a victim, right? But that's what socialists have to do in order to conquer a house, in order to conquer a society. They have to emasculate the leader of the family, historically, is the man. So they do that. And it's a four-pronged attack. It's the one in front of you that happens when you're the information you're constantly being inundated with, and it's economically on the sides of you, right? And then it's behind you with your kids in school. So they've got you surrounded. And what happens is, who are the men today? You say we're alphas, and we are, but we're the ones who are cast aside. We're the ones who are ridiculed, who are pointed at. What are you, crazy? You don't want to have subsidized health care for your family? What are you, nuts? You don't want to have a society that helps raise your kid? What do you mean you don't want to take away from a guy who makes more than you and give it to people who have less? See, so in other words, when government, they have to throw a coup around the family. And how do you do that? You take out the strongest member. You take out the father. And I've got kids. I've got teenage girls today. And I look at these boys today. They're not men, but they were never told to be men. In fact, the masculine reactions that they had they were told they were wrong. Their whole life they were wrong to be a man. So you've stripped that out of our society. But who is the man in our society? Who is the leader in our society? Government. And that's how you know it's over with, brother. That's why we have this show, The Liberty. I'm fighting against the tide, but I know when I laugh and I tell the guys, we got more listeners and, we can monitor a podcast a little more. When I do my Sunday show, you can't. But I know it's always going to be a small percentage because this kind of show of Americanism, of true liberty, of true individual responsibility, it doesn't appeal anymore in America. We are the super minority. It's not a race. It's an ideology of freedom and liberty and property. We're the smallest among us. And you see this in this midterm election. You have Soviets. These are socialists. They're not Democrats. These are communists of a different degree. And that's what won in a tsunami. It won. And I got news for you, Verlon. The next election will be worse. And why do I say that? Illinois, where you and I live. We're the spear tip of we are the communist capital of America. And we are the spear tip of the direction of America. We're the compass. And you just elected a socialist fraud. And that's what's going to happen after Trump. And that was been kind of my argument with the people who wanted a manipulated society. I used to say, what does everybody want a strong man for? Aren't you the strong man in your house? Why do you need a government to be the strong man or a leader of the government? So to me, you and I, it's not about race. It's about our ideology. And we are the super, super, super minority. We're 1/10 of 1% in America anymore. And I say that I also blame unions, labor unions. Look what you did to these bricklayers, to these iron workers, to these plumbers. You emasculated them. You took their negotiation, the pride in their work, and you told them, because you're part of a group, you get it. But you don't have to be an individual anymore. That's what collectivism is. It takes you away from you're just part of a bigger picture. You're not you anymore. So when I say we're re-arguing the Enlightenment, we're re-arguing masculinity. We're re-arguing individuality. We're re-arguing what it means to be an individual. And that's the most important thing that you lose when you become a collective. And I honestly think we're done. We have to go through that thing that France went through. I think the next war, and this is terrible, and I rant about Syria, it's terrible. And what's going to happen is I got articles where they're stopping the dollar in when it comes to commodities. India, Russia, China, they're all stopping the dollar. And that's a real threat. The news is a real threat. But the real war that's going to happen is going to be a civil war, I think. What do you think?
Yeah, it's not. But you know what? It's starting now with the left. They're eating their own, whether it's Hollywood or politics. Did you see what happened with Dick Durbin? It was, and this is why I wanted to finish up with my statement.
Go ahead.
It was a black lawyer, and he hollered out. He was hollering at Dick Durbin, saying that there's no black men in the Supreme Court, in the Illinois Supreme Court, and the old liberal ideology came out of Dick Durbin in 1 second. Well, I guess you forgot about the black woman. That's where it all comes back around, where they broke the black man down through affirmative action and that liberal ideology, and black people don't even know it. They had freedom in the beginning, but they settled on government to take care of them.
You know what?
And it's terrible.
You know why I'm blessed in life is that I grew up at the time in America that I did, right? I caught the best of the old and the beginning of the new. But when we were kids, we didn't interact with prejudice. We just didn't. We didn't believe, when I went to St. Joe's, and I went to school with the highest black population in a parochial school at that time. But I didn't view them as that. I viewed them as kids I didn't know. As I got to know them, they became friends of mine. Friends of mine who were raised a certain way. We all went through a parochial school, which tends to be a little bit more conservative in ideology. And I watched as I interacted with them, the response that other black kids would have towards conservative black kids. And they basically attacked them. So they started to eat their own, like you say. And you're 100% right. And where does that lead? I believe that's a circle. I don't think they win in the end. Because ultimately, guys like you, guys like the kids I went to school with, they reject what the community is telling them. And they either, one, move out of it. I laugh every time we talk about the changing neighborhoods. Who are the people that are really recognizing the ghettos and wanting to get out? Are the people, the black people who don't want to live like that anymore and who don't want government to tell them that they have to just move to another ghetto, another subsidized house. So I think in the end, we win because they're wrong. Listen, this policy, all of their fundamental policies, and I had the kid in there print up the 1936 Soviet Constitution. I said 34 yesterday, but that's when they started crafting it. But I had them printed up. And it's amazing when you read, just a real quick, the fundamental rights and duties of a citizen. I'm just going to read you the first one. And you tell me if this isn't exactly what every black politician says. Citizens of the USSR have the right to work. That is, are guaranteed the right to employment and payment for their work in accordance with the quality of the standard of living. The right to work ensures the socialist organization of the national economy, the steady growth of production forces of Soviet society, the elimination of the possibility of economic crisis, and the abolition of unemployment. This is pretty much the platform of every black politician. Article 19.
That's exactly what they're trying to push right now.
The right to rest and leisure. Look at this. Citizens of the USSR have the right to rest and leisure. Well, what are our hot topics? You have a mandatory vacation. You get pregnant. The father and the mother get time off. The right to rest and leisure is ensured by the reduction of the working day. What is that? It's a union. 7 hours a day, overwhelming majority of workers. Regardless of the individuality of the citizen, this is a union. The doctrine of the Soviet Union is the premise of all labor unions and public sector unions and the foundation of the Democrat Party. So you are now a Soviet. They won the war. It's amazing when you look at it. But what these idiots on CNN and MSNBC and the idiots that watch them, what they don't realize is that they don't realize that they've been subliminally programmed to be a socialist. And that's why when Pritzker gets into office with his fanny pack on that he thinks is a backpack, he gets in and he gives all the government workers an immediate raise. Well, you're going to get a raise too if you're not in the government, only yours will be in taxes. So what Pritzker says is that these people who work for the state, they are the virtuous and they are the honorable and they will be well paid. Now, he doesn't care that a guy like me, 3 businesses, I'm losing money. I'm losing money every year. He doesn't care that a guy like you working I mean, I don't even know. You work harder than I do. You got one job. You work, 16 hours a day?
Yeah.
I mean,
Most of the week.
It's insane. But see how much better off you and I would have been if we would have become Illinois tow truck drivers, like I could have walked into a fireman job if I wanted to. I knew all the right guys, too, back then. Knew all the right guys to go sit on my ass and wait for my pension to kick in. I couldn't do it. So I'm not, and some guys, they do it and they love it and they're heroes and they run in the bill. I go, okay, fine, good for you. But they're not better than you. Now, in order for Pritzker to give this money to these workers who work for the municipality, he has to take it from you in one way or another. Now, he doesn't have the courage, and he's not a man to be direct and take it from you the way he should. He'll figure out how to charge you for life. So he'll license things that used to be free. Now they're talking about taxing social media. Did you see that?
No, I haven't heard that yet.
Oh, yeah. You're going to use your Facebook and your Twitter? Fee, tax. So they tax speech. And their argument is, well, you're using a venue that is more than just yelling in the air. Oh, okay. So what they tell you is they own everything. See, they can only tax the internet if they own it. So government has a sneaky way of backdoor nationalizing everything. When they make you jump through hoops and have a license or have a permit, they've stolen a piece of that company. See, that's what that is. And the rest of society says, no, they're protecting us. But that's because you're surrounded by morons. And I don't just mean the guy in the Prius in front of you who doesn't know to make a right on red. I'm not just talking about him. Everybody who doesn't understand that government doesn't have the right to seize your property, that they don't own it, that they can't tax you on your life, they're servants. They're slaves. Because you know what? There's a comfort in being a slave. You talk to these failures. I see them every day. They love to say, I'm protected by the Democrat Party. I am protected by the Republican agenda. They don't understand they're slaves to it. And that in the dark of night, when these guys get together, they have the same lobbyists. The DNC and the GOP have the same power structure team. They both pay $500,000 to sit on the Ways and Means Committee. What is the Ways and Means Committee? That means if you live, you got to deal with these son of a guns. So We've been overthrown, brother. So how do you do it? Donald Trump isn't going to do it for you, and you see what happens when he even talks about it. You know, I said a while ago, this guy's he's going too far against the grain. They're going to attack him on every front. And now we argue about, gee, is the FBI corrupt? Well, not all of them, but the top son of a guns who get appointed constantly, who get to sit on their asses and get to dictate what society does, yes, they're corrupt. And so was the cross-dresser J. Edgar Hoover when he surveilled everybody. Corrupt. The whole thing needs to be torn apart. The whole thing needs to be torn apart. And all restraints put on them, because otherwise they can do anything. And that's what you're seeing. Listen to me. This whole thing's a joke. This whole thing with Russia. You've got newscasters asking this guy, are you an asset for Russia? Are you nuts? This guy didn't. The only thing he even came close to doing is having his company open up a hotel. And if you're going to open up anything in Russia, you got to pay off the politicians like Chicago, like Ed Burke and Burger King. That's the only thing. Yeah. Is Burger King in collusion with Russia? No, they just had to pay off a scumbag politician. That's the exact same thing. So the argument, my point is, brother, until this little voice and it spawns and you hear 55,000 other guys start to talk like this, and this is the last venue where freedom can talk is on podcasts and radio. And don't get me wrong, I'm sure, believe me, radio gets knuckled under too. You can't get too crazy, otherwise they give you a podcast, and I'm here, right? They don't want me on actual radio.
You on the spot.
Go ahead.
I got to put you on the spot with one last question.
Go ahead.
Now, on your radio show, I told you that Miss Cortez was an idiot, and you responded to me by saying, no, she's very, very smart.
Wait.
After seeing her talk about getting rid of cars, fossil fuel cars in 11 to 12 years, do you still stand by that statement?
No. Well, you're talking about Ocasio, Sandy. Her name is really Sandy Ocasio. Yeah. You're talking about Sandy. And Sandy, what I said is she's smart on this front. She knows how to sell the scam. Is she smart enough to realize what she's selling is a lie? I think she already knows it is. I think she's a Barack Obama or a Dick Durbin, where they know that it's bullshit, right? Pritzker knows what he's selling you is bullshit, but he just has to do it to get the vote. So in his real life, he doesn't really practice that. Oh, he may write a big fat check that, by the way, he's got 17 accountants already deducting on next year's taxes when he writes a big check. That just saves him money down the road at that level. So he doesn't really believe the Soviet socialism. The guy, and I think Ocasio-Cortez doesn't really believe it. If you look at her life, she's another wealthy kid, tried a business, failed, and she probably said, you know what, screw it. Listen, I've been tempted. You know how many times I say to myself, I should have shut my mouth and taken that fireman job. I'd be retired right now, damn it. I'm 51. I'd be sitting with my feet up on the beach. Wouldn't have to hustle. So, I think that's how she is, as opposed to a guy who ran against like that Julian Castro from California. That guy's a communist.
Now you want to talk about Obama-ite. He's a carbon copy of Obama.
Yeah,
that's what he is.
He's a communist, and so is the guy that ran against Ted Cruz, Beto O'Rourke, communist. So those are the ones that scare me. It's funny, Obama, and he uses all of those attributes of Alinsky, and he uses all of that mantra of a society's obligation to be involved in everyone's life. But in real life, what does he do? His real inner circle made billions of dollars, right? Vistria and Astrial or Acerol investments here in Chicago. Like the guys who his brother-in-law's buddy. So what he does is he uses that power and leverages to make his friends and himself extremely rich. So he practices the bastardization of in his world, socialism, in the same way our Republicans practice the bastardization of capitalism. They just want to abuse their power to enrich their select friends. So they're just whores. They're political whores. Whereas what destroys you is a guy who doesn't necessarily need to be a political whore like Pritzker. Pritzker's going to destroy Illinois because you can't buy off a guy worth $4 billion. You're not buying this guy off. He's going to rewrite and reorchestrate the inner workings of Illinois to where you are absolutely in a straitjacket of socialism. That's what Pritzker's going to do. And that's why I say you got to move, baby. And it's heart-wrenching and it's heartbreaking. I had a conversation with Amy. Works her ass off. She really does. 2 kids. She's got her husband. They're working constantly, and she's trying to stay afloat. I said, honey, you're losing money every day. Every day that you own real estate in Illinois. And me too. Me too. Every day we're losing money. And you know what's proving me right is reality. At a certain point, you're not arguing with me. You're arguing with reality. Drive down the street. I take a different way to the studio just because, I have ADD and I like to smoke cigars, so I burn time up. Every time I take a different way, there's another commercial property for rent. That is the leading indicator of residential. If businesses can't stay in business, workers can't stay in work. Right? Ultimately, the government can't afford to employ everybody. Hence the Soviet Union. Ultimately, it's a fail. So we're going to go through those pains. That's why I said, if you think the last couple of years were bad, if you thought Paint Chips Pat Quinn was bad, or even 7 foot of stupid Rauner, you don't even know the definition of bad. Because this son of a gun, there's a reason he gave these guys their raises today. There's a reason you see him go to work with his fanny pack on. There's a reason he's setting you up for the big knockout punch. And when it comes, it'll be too late. And you're going to get a time like you see in Chicago at through the 70s where they were just walking away from property. Guys are just, here you go, take it. Just gone, put my shit in a truck, get the hell out of here. That's where it goes. And you know what, man, it's a shame. It's a shame because I can't sustain. I'll be broke. And they'll be happy. See, they're happiest when you're broke because now they got you. That's why they set up these schemes like Obamacare. Obamacare wasn't about anything that was sold. It was about bankrupting you. It was about making you bend knee to a system that once you were in it, you can't get out. So that's the brilliance of what they do. So when I say they're smart, that's the context I mean it. They're smart because they know how to build that Rube Goldberg mechanism. You can't get the exit door. That's how they're smart. Listen, and it's on every front. It's on every front. Whether it's the war, look at how smart they are. You're giving trillions and trillions, and now you're an anti-patriot if you say stop it. Now you're not a patriot anymore. Wait, I don't want to pay $7 trillion so that admirals can be bought off by third world guys. No, you're not a patriot now. Oh, okay. You're a libertarian. That's my favorite one. What do you mean I'm a libertarian? I'm not. I'm an American who believes in the Declaration of Independence and in the Constitution. That's all I am. I'm not a party affiliated with anybody. I wouldn't give. You could put a gun to my head. I wouldn't give these son of a bitches $1. Republicans, libertarians, nothing. My offer to you is nothing. It's the Michael Corleone. I give you nothing. So, and I think people who do, they're doing it because they want something back. I think they're scumbags. I don't think everybody's a little old lady just writing a check out of the goodness of her heart. I think some of them like the system because they make their living from it. Look at these construction guys. I know half of these guys. They're decent guys. Their grandfathers were buying off government for 40 freaking years. And they write the check to the same scumbag. That's why you got Ed Burke in there. Same scumbag, and they get the contract, and they do the sidewalks and the curbs and the same bullshit, and we overpay all the time. So my problem is this. It's the system's got to be shattered. Shatter it. Start over. I'd like to do it civilly. Hopefully it can be done. But talk to a Democrat. Tell me if it could be done. Look at the mayor's race of Chicago. Tell me if it could be done. How are you going to do it? 17 versions of the same scumbag, and half of them are legacy scumbags. Look at that transgendering Tony Pritzker. Grady. You freaking kidding me? She could do anything, and she's going to be the lead runner. Why? Because the unions pay her. And then the union. Yeah. And then the virtuous teacher, the communist son of a bitches with their love handles all stretched out, talking about how they represent kids. Come on. They represent themselves. They represent the visa they have to pay. And they'll do it. They'll say anything or do anything about your kid. And in the meantime, they're awful freaking rich. You see how these teachers retire? Come on. And in the meantime, what are you producing? You know what you're producing? Watch the 5 o'clock news. That's what you're producing. It's despicable. Right. Watch the news. You got to take a shower. Listen, thank you very much, Verlan. I love you. Thanks for calling the show.
I love you, brother.
Take
it easy.
You too, pal. And that is why you call the Liberty Hour podcast, because it's fun. No commercials. I don't have to go to commercials. We can go on and talk about various subjects. That's the benefit of having ADD, which is terrible. Now, here's not the benefit, is that you get off topic. And so what I wanted to do, and it plays into Verlan's call, when in doubt, when even the socialist is backed into a corner, they have one alarm that they can pull like a fire alarm. They have one axe they can grab at any time, and that is to call the person a racist. Now, you've heard the clip of the imbecile who was talking to Webb, right? Or maybe you didn't. I don't know. I'm sure everybody listens to the show, so let's listen to that.
I've chosen to cross different parts of the media world, done the work so that I'm qualified to be in each one. I never considered my color the issue. I considered my qualifications the issue.
Well, David, you know, that's a whole nother long conversation about white privilege and things that you have the privilege of doing that people of color don't have the privilege of.
How do I have the privilege of white privilege?
David, by virtue of being a white male, you have white privilege. This whole long conversation, I don't have time to get into it.
Ariva, I hate to break it to you, but you should have been better prepped. I'm black.
Okay, then I stand.
See, you went to white privilege. This is the falsehood in this. You went immediately with an assumption. Your people, obviously, or you didn't look. You're talking to a black man who started out in rock radio in Boston, who crossed the paths into hip-hop, rebuilding one of the greatest black stations in America, and went on to work for Fox News, where I'm told apparently blacks aren't supposed to work, but yet you come with this assumption and you go to white.
But see, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, because if he doesn't agree with socialism, he's a racist. Now, she just got caught with her pants down, and she's talking to a black guy. Okay, fine. But what about the other dimwits? What about the other dimwits out there? And who represents dimwits more than The View?
Did they get anywhere with it, right? But Republicans now, with this, I think, could make such a significant statement by forcing him to resign. But will Republicans now step up to the plate with Donald Trump? Because he has been using, I think, the border wall as sort of this dog whistle for racism. The government is still shut down, and I think it's all about, let's not let all these brown people in, right? Unless they're working for farmers, unless they're working in agriculture. So now will the Republican Party step up to him and say, we don't want this anymore?
But Sonny, there's 42% of this country that support the wall. Are they all racist?
That's a good question.
I'm asking you that. I don't think so.
Question.
I don't think so. I think there are a lot of people that believe in
I don't
security.
know. Is Donald Trump racist?
But I'm not referring. I mean,
I don't know. Is he?
I'm just saying, if you're going to paint a broad stroke about a wall and that being racist, then I
don't know. But
there are a lot of people that support the wall being built.
Is Donald Trump racist?
See, she doesn't. She's not really. It's a rhetorical question. She's already. That's why the duh came out, because he's obviously racist, right? Just like Webb was obviously racist. Just like anybody who does. Just like Verlan, obviously a racist. Anybody who doesn't agree with socialism, you are clearly a racist. Because if you're not down with me, there's something wrong with you. Because they can't actually argue the point of their argument because it's wrong. There is socialism at every level, at every degree, is immoral. Immoral. Complete and total tyranny. Absolute. And that's the issue that Americans are supposed to be protected against. You've broken your covenant with the American citizen. That's what government did decades ago. Now it's simply about applying the pressure. And all they need do to disqualify your argument is label you a racist. Your real life doesn't matter. Have you loved people of a different race? Do you look at them differently? Do you look at white people differently? Here's the thing about me. My ism isn't race. It's communism. See, if you're a communist, you're scum to me. You're not as good as me. You're not worthy of my attention or my money or my effort. That's my ism. And it's universal. Ironically, it's probably far more white people than any other race. So there you go. But now they all could call me a racist, right? And I'm somebody who has come on the airwaves since I was given the opportunity to tell you that, number one, the Simpson and Mazzoli bill is perfect, and it simply was not. It was not. They didn't do what they said they would do. It wasn't applied. It wasn't followed. It was never really true. It was conceived of a lie. And why aren't politicians held accountable for that? You passed a law, and the law addressed this 33 years ago. That's all. I'm just asking you to do what you said you'd do. But government never has to. And you only have to do what they say you do, always and forever. And by the way, they could change the rules midway through. So you're a slave, and they are the God. And that's the position we're in now. So what can you do in America? Nothing. But what you can do in individual states is unfortunately not pleasant and not good. But your alternative is to stay and to be abused by a self-aggrandizing, mommy-daddy issue billionaire like J.B. Pritzker.
As my first executive order as governor, I'm directing all state agencies to usher in a renewed era of transparency.
What does that mean?
I think it sets a very good tone, a very strong tone that some of the games of the past are not going to be tolerated.
So just speak in platitudes, right? I want to get to the real good one.
Everybody deserves this wage. We're not going to leave a worker out because they happen to work for a small business.
So now what he's doing, he's nationalizing small business, right? So what he's going to do is everybody has to pay their people equally, regardless of their production, regardless of their business, of your business. We got a caller on the line. Let's go to Mike in Plano. Mike, thank you so much for calling the show. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing good, Sean. You know, those shows like The View, you know, all those TV networks are nothing but the Ministry of Information for the Democrat Communist Party. You don't even have to waste your time playing that stuff, man. You know what it's all about.
But you know what I'm laughing at, Mike? When I was a kid, I'm over 50. I'm 51. When I was a kid, it was Phil Donahue. And you loved Phil Donahue. I to this day, you want to know something? I look at Phil Donahue. I still remember my mother went to the show. She got ready with her little turtle. I can remember it like yesterday. I liked Phil Donahue. But what do? There's a reason. And there is no rebuttal. Because do you realize who the Republicans are on The View? Or who the people who don't agree with socialism allegedly?
It's the rhinos. It's Meghan McCain, and it's all those, Jedediah Bila, all those urban liberals masquerading as conservatives.
Now, Michael, will your kids get home from school? And by the way, a school.
No, I don't have kids. I'm about 31. I'm a generation behind you, Sean. But yeah, I know what you're talking about.
So I could tell you what happens when my kids got home from school. They were inundated by their teachers, and by the way, I never sent my kids to a public school. I paid out of my pocket from day one, preschool. I sent them to parochial schools. This probably would have made my life 10 times better not to do this. And even in parochial schools, they're told about this "it takes a village" agenda. They're told your father is too masculine. All those things we're hearing on the clips today from Gillette, this has been the mantra since the 60s. They emasculate the father. They infiltrate the mind of the kids. And this is the result, The View. Because I got news for you. You and I would never waste our time watching it. But it's the number one show. It's the number one, which means there's, 30 million people tuning in? That's a lot of people, brother. And it's played on, and that's my problem is, where's our voice? You have to seek it out. Where theirs, you're inundated with it. You can't avoid The View.
Sean, you're absolutely right, man. In 1964, Barry Goldwater could have saved us from the welfare state, but they politically destroyed him with one ad.
Yeah. And now tell me, Mike, what isn't the welfare state? You know what's funny? I laugh in this government shutdown. The biggest gripe by Republicans is farmers aren't getting subsidies. You mean welfare? So we've adopted it.
Yeah, I know.
And that's my point.
That's another thing, too. Kinzinger, every time he goes on, he's nothing but a pretty boy for Fox News, and he always talks about how the spending's on autopilot. He votes for it. He has voted for the Farm Bill, which is a bunch of corporate welfare.
First of all, let's take this one at a time. If Adam Kinzinger is the pretty boy, I'm Ava Gardner. But secondly, if
there was an award, he won't start either.
I'm kidding. Here's the thing about him. He's never going to go anywhere. You know why? He brings home the bacon. So this goes to my argument.
Yeah, and he's in a super red district. They'll never vote him out.
So this is our problem. You know how hard it is to turn down the money, brother? There's a small section of us who say, I don't need your frickin' money. The rest of us, the farmers, the other guy, they're cut me in or cut it out. I have a saying for my old neighborhood. Now, everybody puts up with the corruption as long as you cut me in. Cut me in or cut it out. Well, now here's the thing. Too many of us are cut in. Too many of us are buying ideas of welfare by another name. A tariff is a welfare. It's a welfare. These are all preventative mechanisms to control the citizen, when the reality is the Republicans fear a free man just as much as Democrats do. And we don't have an alternative. I was looking at two guys arguing on my Twitter feed, and one guy who's a libertarian, was talking about Libertarian Party. And the other guy said, well, the Libertarian Party isn't going anywhere because it doesn't give their people money. Well, that's how it all should be. Otherwise, you have this system where the Sean Gastons, the Underwoods, they buy these committee appointments, which, think about this, a government within a government. So in other words, my representative, if he's not on a committee, he's useless. So we've allowed the government to create stops of representation within itself.
Hey, Sean, let me jump in real quick.
Yeah.
Lauren Underwood bought our district. She took a whole bunch of money from coastal communists and won this race that Randy Holford won by 20 points just 2 years ago.
And she never lived in the district. She moved in with her mother and father.
She's been living off government checks for over a decade, living in Washington. I never heard of her.
We had the kid come on. Damn it, I'm the worst with names. Morris.
Real quick, Sean.
Yeah.
She has probably announced over Twitter too that she's attended the local women's march this weekend, one day after her own party denounced it for anti-Semitism.
Yeah, and that's to a point that shame on men. Shame on men. The women's march, the this march, the that march. What you want to do is implement the very sexism you say you're against. You're not against sexism. You're against the control of it. Do you listen to the women argue? They're not really against sexism. They just want to use it. So they force their version of affirmative action on you. And that's what this is about. And you know what's funny? These women's march. Do you ever look at these things? I mean, call me silly. My wife gets mad at me all the time. She's like, "You're so judgmental." Well, forgive me. God gave me judgment. But number two, these women have a problem with men. You look like plumbers. It looks like a plumber union. There's never a hot one. They're 450 pounds with pigtails and vaginas on their head. You're I wouldn't give you a second look if you were on fire. It's ridiculous to me. But, Michael?
Yeah, they love to trash the place, too. I thought these were environmentalists.
Yeah, right. Oh, I love that. But here's the thing. I'm going to give you a little heads up. So I'm deciding now, we're having this State of the Union affair. I'm going to give you a little inside baseball, what's happening here. We're going to have that State of the Union affair at 5:60 a.m., and I threw down the gauntlet because they don't even invite me to the damn thing. They're like, yeah, if you want to come. I said, why don't you sell me at a table? If you sell me at a table, like you sell Proft and Amy and Joe, I guarantee you I'll sell the table out. So just keep a listen, because if they sell the table out, I'm going to need some people to buy. I'm going to need you to, you know what I mean? Maybe I'll reimburse you in cigars. Don't let them in on it, but we'll figure it out.
Oh, yeah, I betcha. Hey, Sean, can I mention one thing real quick?
Sure.
Yeah, you're talking about immigration and, wanting to streamline it. I'm kind of with you on that. I'm not interested in mass deportations and all that unless you're a criminal alien or something.
What if me and you were? What if you and I were born in Guadalajara, or if you and I were born in Ecuador or Cuba? You got to streamline it. But here's the thing: it's never been about immigration. It's always about welfare. Listen to the American argue against the immigrant. He's not arguing per se.
Yeah, here's the thing, Sean. Your argument would face a lot of pushback,
of course,
from the uber nationalist wing of the Republican Party.
That's right.
Ann Coulter type.
Exactly. Because you know what? Ann's smart. You want to talk about smart? She's very smart, and she's smart.
She's annoying.
But she's smart enough to know that a corrupt corporatist system makes people very, very rich. And I don't just mean Karl Rove. Karl Rove. You want to look at this fat slob? Never had a job in his life. He's worth hundreds of millions, because that system in place, the Bush corporatism, the Republican, the Nixon oversight, and the committee, that makes them very valuable. So they want to protect it. I'm the one that's arguing for complete and absolute equality, and that's no benefits though. My way to get to equality is no benefit.
All the big conservative talkers, you name them, Hannity, Ingram, Rush, Mark Levin, all of them. After Trump, they're revolutionary populists. Like, we're supposed to forget that they've been towing the line of the Republican establishment for 20-plus years.
Not me, brother. I'm not. I'm an American. I'm about liberty, about freedom, about the individual. I'm about your property rights and my property rights and the restraint of government at every level, not the unfettered power of the Leviathan, which is what they're selling. All right, brother, listen, I got to go open a cigar store. Thank you for calling. I really appreciate it, Michael.
Thanks, Sean.
Take care.
Take care, brother.
You too. Okay, so we'll be back Sunday night with my guy Macbeth, who I'm looking at through the window, whose head looks even bigger. But what's nice is he doesn't get to talk on this one. We'll be back Sunday night, 8 to 9. And then next Tuesday, I will be in town, I think, or we will be mobile, but there will be a Liberty Hour podcast. Do me a favor, if you go on YouTube, like it or subscribe, because they're watching me. The suits are watching me. And one guy in particular, he don't like me. So let's make sure I stick around. Otherwise, I'll just have to do it out of the cigar store. I will talk to you later. Thank you so much for listening to the Liberty Hour.